Hello and welcome to a VO Journey podcast. My name is Anthony Pica. This show is all about helping the new and upcoming voiceover artists grow their business and sidestep all the crazy things that I seem to step on. We've got an incredible show today. I'm going to be interviewing the CEO from Voquent, Miles Chicoine, and we are going to be talking about the state of the voiceover industry, like literally all of it. This is absolutely an incredible conversation. Miles is such an intelligent guy. Super excited to be talking to him about a bunch of things. And, also just as a quick note, we have a cool offer going on for the Academy at the moment, for VO's Journey Elite Academy. We're offering the first month for 50% off. There'll be a link below. We talk a little bit more towards the end of the podcast about it, but love for you to check that out. You can learn more. Like I said, there'll be a link below, or you can always go to avosjourney.com. All right. So anyways, without further ado, let's get to this state of the voiceover community and everything that's been going on with some different perspectives from like my perspective, because I'm crazy, and Miles' perspective from really smart guy. All right, let's do it.
This is VO's Journey. With your host, the incomparable Anthony Pica.
All right. Well, it is a joy and a pleasure always to welcome to the show my friend, CEO of Voquent, Miles Chicoine. How are you, my friend? How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing very well. What about you?
I'm doing great. Early in the morning because it's late over there, but that's okay. So excited to be talking with you today about the state of the voiceover industry. I think so much has been going on. So much has been happening. And I do feel like a lot of people who are talking about the state of the industry, are doing fine. But a lot of them that talk about it, I think oftentimes, really talk about things happening in the voiceover industry from a viewpoint that doesn't always reflect upon what a good portion of the voiceover industry is actually going through. And a lot of those people in the VO's Journey community, are people who are freelancers and business owners of their own that do a lot of representing themselves and so forth. And there's a lot going on that affects all of us. So I'm glad that we get to talk about a whole bunch of topics. We have a whole bunch of things to talk about today. So let's go ahead and kick it off. And thank you again, as always, for doing this. Super excited about it. So let's pop off with the first question. We have, so getting into the conversation about, the cool, incredible report that you guys did a report, I don't know, it was a couple years ago. And we used about it. It was a video you guys did, right? You put together by the 101 voice acting websites. Mm-hmm. For voice actors to get into. And I think this is another reason why, I think we met too. I was impressed by what you guys did. You put out this report, you did a lot of research on the sites for voice actors to get on that they could possibly make some money. And you guys recently came out with an updated report, which is just fantastic. We talked about in our group about just stats and information about voiceover websites, and I think there's so many options. There's so many things. From your point of view, where do you think the best place for someone just getting started, in the voiceover industry should go to?
It's a great question. I think the 101 voice acting websites report that we've done has always got a lot of interest because it kind of gives you a sort of a perspective of how all these different sites are forming and where work is kind of going. And I think the thing is that we try not to sort of influence or suggest or recommend or say this site is really good, or this type of site is really good, or this type of place is great to go, or this is the best way to get work. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's got their own starting point. And I think that if their starting point is they've never done any performing work before, they've never been a voice actor before, they've never been an actor before, they've never done any theater work before, then there's going to be a bunch of sites which would be an easy place to do that, and that would be the freelance gig market sites, like dare I say it, Fiverr and Upwork and sites like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not an advocate of right. using those sites, but I think that there's enough work going through there that if somebody wants to start out for the first time and they've never done anything before, that's a good place to try to cut their teeth. However, I would suggest that if somebody has been performing as, say, an actor for years, is that the best place to start? I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's levels of experience that allows you to go ahead and set up at a particular point and say, I can do this and I could do a really good job of it. And if you do a good job at something, you should get paid well for it. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there's going to be ways and means to get work, which isn't just about joining a big gig market site. That will allow you to get your toes, wet and get into the market. And if somebody is already done some work with, on camera or off camera before of any kind, like if they've worked as a radio DJ or if they've, done, been involved in some podcasting or done some YouTube work or whatever, they don't have to start at the top of that list on that report and say, right, I'm going to work my way down. They can go right down to the bottom and work their way up and try to work with more agencies and try to look at how they can get more and more direct work. And getting direct work is something that I would really advocate in a big way, because that has been, for the last sort of 10 to 15 years, the big disruptor. The biggest disruptor in the industry has been voices themselves getting work directly. And that still is a major, major way to get work. And that's something that everybody should try to cultivate, regardless of whether they decide to start using certain sites to kind of, build out their numbers or get more practice or get more opportunities.
I and I think I'm so glad that you talked about that too. So, and I do think that it with everything going on today, all of these platforms are opportunities. And, I think to ignore opportunities is just silly, in my opinion. But, I do agree that, we all have to go the places that make sense for our business. But I do agree with you about the direct business model, because if you think about it, any of these websites too, their biggest fear is that you're going to work directly with the client as opposed to working through them. That's why sites threaten to kick you off the site, to, delete your stuff, to hold you kind of ransom, you know what I mean, if you work directly with the client. Now, in some senses, if the client comes through them and they've spent the money, there is part understanding there. If it's a freelance site that you didn't pay for. But I think that is definitely something that is not talked about a lot, because quite honestly, and this is where I found most of the people doing the talking, besides email, or they know Joe from 15, 20 years ago, who knows Sally, who works at, a place where they know a couple people, don't really know how to get business in today's market. So, that's always an industry, which is where insert agents and agencies, right, who have that market or that network. But you don't need that today. And not that we're saying that that's not a good thing, because it's always good to have, I think, an advocate and someone who can help you, but you don't need it. You can go direct to people. But I do think that, to me, what's interesting is that there's not a lot, going on about how do you go direct, because, and that's one thing I love about what you guys put out too, though, is because it does disrupt businesses, and some senses like your business. Although I do think the stuff that your business is doing is so multifaceted that I don't think a voice actor could really do that, because it takes multiple voice actors and all kinds of people working on big projects. But I guess we'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that's a good thing, and we don't talk about that a lot. We don't really talk about it. We're so focused on Fiverr being, destroying everything. And really, Fiverr has been around now for over a decade. I mean, it's not going anywhere. Yeah.
Well, sites like Fiverr, they need to protect themselves from people trying to effectively steal the client. Okay. And anyone who goes onto a platform needs to understand that platform created the opportunity. That platform has the relationship at least to some degree with the client. And so if the idea is to use platforms to steal clients, I don't think that's a good idea, because you're just going to end up getting blacklisted on however many of these sites. They're going to drop you or ban you or whatever. You're going to build yourself a bad reputation, and you're going to lose those sources of leads and opportunities that it could have otherwise acted as. It's really, really important to understand that a direct opportunity is one that's created to the extent that you've either directly solicited a client who's going to pay you, whether it's by a phone call or an email or generated it, through them coming to you or going to your website or reaching out through a direct message on social media or whatever. That's your client. You can go ahead and have total control over that conversation, over the rates, the negotiation, how you're going to work with them, the base of what you will, what you won't do, what you can't provide. That's entirely up to you. There's a big difference between that and going, oh God, this client really likes my voice. And now if I can just find a way to tell them that they can get me cheaper if I go to this other site, or they can get me cheaper if they use my website next time instead of using this website that they found me on. That's a bad move, because I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be opportunities going through those sites, and people went to those sites not because they were trying to find one person that they could create a relationship with specifically, but so that they could basically find someone who could do that job. And if you start undermining what that site's purpose is to the client by trying to steal them, you may be actually turning off the client. Some clients, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's great, because they want to shave off, $10 or $100 or whatever the ratio is, depending on the scope of the work. But I think that a lot of clients would see that as unprofessional. And I think that's a big sort of no-go area. Don't undermine the sites that you're on or the platforms you're on by trying to find a way to tear them off of the site, because if they wanted to go directly, there's a lot of ways to do that. And one of those ways is to have things like websites, or for a site, like a client, there's lots and lots of clients that keep independent rosters of people that they can reach out directly to. There's tons of translation companies that do this. They have huge rosters of people that they don't broadcast them to the rest of the world. They don't showcase them to the rest of the world. They don't try to create opportunities for the people they work with. They just simply utilize them as and when it's relevant to them. And I think the thing is that there's nothing wrong with canvassing all the different places where people can reach out to you directly. But that's definitely at odds with the idea of like, oh God, this client really loves my voice, and I'm going to find a way to let them know that they could get me in some other way. It's not good business. And that's why I think it's not something I would recommend. So I would avoid that. Even if you're starting out and times are hard, don't build a rod for your own back. Try to keep them separated, and definitely cultivate that direct business and those direct business streams. Do that as something that if it doesn't pay off immediately, it's going to have to cook over a long period of time, because everyone has to remember that there's a lot of people doing voiceover work now. There's a lot of people, more than ever, by far. And that means it's highly competitive. The answer to being highly competitive, some people will go, oh, I need to lower my rates, or I need to undercut the market. Well, that's one approach. The other approach is to be better than everybody else, is to deliver a fantastic product. It's to deliver a great version of your voice. And I think that's what you really want to focus on, and then use the sites to amplify that, use your own website to amplify that, use your direct mailing campaigns to amplify that, use your social media to amplify that.
No, I agree. I do think though that there is another part of that, and that is most of us are not prepared for that work, meaning and that level of service, that ability to handle the inquiries and handle the flow of just interest, as well as the service, as well as the delivery, as well as, I work with a lot of people, like if you're in a place where you're still trying to figure out, hey, what should I charge? You know what I mean? What should, that's fine. That's a part of, the growth that, voice actors go through. But the reality is that, while you're going through that, it can be helpful, very helpful to, be at a place that has put all that together for you. And I'm a big advocate for learning, and everything is flowing. It's not one size forever. You know what I mean? And I think that's, working with places that have done a lot of work to figure this stuff out, or agents, whoever. I call them online or offline agents, right? It's the world we live in, but, learning from these opportunities too. I've learned so much through working with bigger businesses. I've learned so much working with Voquent on just how things, how bigger businesses, successful businesses are handling things like that. And it gives you a big advantage. And I do think, so moving on with what we're talking about, with all talking about big business and stuff, we had a big thing happen recently with the news came out that Backstage had acquired Voice 123, and thought that was a big, did not see that coming. And that was kind of a big deal. And I thought it was even a bigger deal on a side note, just because, the pay to play platforms, even before the freelance sites like Fiverr or Upwork came along, were really the original, I think, sites, Voice 123 and then Voices of these, that we're going to start taking, if you will, business differently from agents and agencies. But, it's definitely interesting about that acquisition, and what does that signal for the voiceover industry? So what do you think about that, with that happening, and the voiceover industry with an acquisition like that? Because we usually don't see that kind of stuff in the voiceover industry, because we're the voiceover industry. We're not dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies, like the S&P 500. However, sites like Fiverr have become billion-dollar companies, so it's changing. So what are your thoughts?
I think, when I think about voiceover as opposed to acting, in many ways, the P2P sites, the platforms like Voice123 and Voices.com, they were later to a game that had already been established. Backstage, they are kind of like the original P2P site. Backstage is still a pay to play. Actors need to pay to have access to whatever is going to be, fed to them, whether it's opportunities or information or whatever, on the site that they can then kind of get involved and interact with and, to audition for or whatever. And so I guess the thing is that what we're really seeing is two major players in the acting world that are trying to, sort of establish their dominant market share. And that's really two companies. You got Talent Systems. They own casting networks. They recently purchased Spotlight. And then you've got Backstage, who have, created a partnership with TA Investments. And they've been on their acquisition trail. They bought Mandy, they bought Star Now, and now they've bought Voice 123. And so the thing that's common with all those models is the performers are paying. The performers are paying. The clients aren't. The clients might be involved in some different degree in different ways with these companies, but fundamentally the revenue stream comes from the performers looking for work. And so the idea of having a site that, where performers pay to have opportunities is a kind of a, it's I guess it's a kind of mainstream business for, a company like Backstage, where it's kind of like, well, this is what they do, and they know the business model well. So I think it fit their kind of profile, their sort of demographic, and that they understand that business model, and therefore they know, what they have to do to help maintain it and keep that position going. I think though, when it comes to acquisitions, there's always a lot of excitement and fear and sort of wonder about an acquisition. When you look at a large acquisition, so I think like a proper acquisition is, I don't say proper, but a meaningful acquisition is, for instance, is like Slack. It got bought by Salesforce, right? Just in December. And Salesforce paid $30 billion for that acquisition. And when you get a major company like that getting purchased by another major company, a lot gets talked about in terms of the value of that purchase. And it's a big deal. It's a marketing sort of venture within itself to talk about the investment and the confidence that Salesforce has in Slack and all the things it intends to do with Slack. Are we seeing lots of changes to Slack as a result of Salesforce buying them? Well, not initially. Will we over the medium to long term? Yeah, I'm sure we will. They've obviously got people behind them and systems and procedures and investments that they can go ahead and make that will allow them to really grow. When it comes to smaller companies where there's an acquisition but nobody's talking about how much it was for, they were saying, oh, this was bought for an undisclosed sum. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that usually happens when the company that's being bought had kind of hit their glass ceiling. They're at the stage where they couldn't really grow anywhere else. They couldn't keep, making these big movements up and up and up and become more and more dominant in their competitive landscape. And eventually somebody comes up and kind of gobbles them up. The owner sells out, or owners sell out. In this case, it was Alex Torrenegra. And, and then what's left is obviously just another benefactor to the same site. Will Backstage invest, deeply in Voice123 specifically? I mean, that's not been their history so far to invest deeply in the. It's more about just maintaining the market presence that they already have. I wouldn't expect them to want to make lots of radical shifts. If they made lots of radical changes, it might hurt the model. It might actually hurt the business. And so, in many cases, it seeks. I would say it's better to keep things sort of reasonably stable with an acquisition like that, and not try to introduce lots and lots of changes. And so in some ways, it's kind of like the big news is no news. It's like, right. It's not going to affect any of the voice actors' lives. It's not going to affect, clients' lives unless there is a massive, huge, monumental shift in the way Voice123 does things. It doesn't represent any change at all. So I think sometimes these kinds of things can make a lot of noise, and it creates a lot of questions, and people are wondering what's going on, what's happening, and does this mean this or does this mean that? Is there a huge investment in the voiceover world now? I think there's an appreciation that voiceover is a growing market that is instrumental to marketing and communications and the arts and performing, whether it's for animations or games or whatever. And so it is a growing market, and therefore worth investing in. But I don't think it has that sort of seismic sort of shift that big acquisitions and big markets represent generally.
No, I hear you. To me, I think it signals something else though too, because as we're talking about Backstage and Voice123, I do think you're right that with that acquisition, at least in some parts, because it was specifically for voice actors. But you are right, Backstage has also done some other acquisitions that are very notable that kind of showcase what they're trying. It seems like what they're trying to do. Like, for example, film. I mean, I think they acquired a film agency as well. They acquired a couple different things, which was Spotlight, and then a couple other places that can show that it does feel like they're trying to, and at least with their acquisitions, unite something under their banner. Here's the crazy thing to me is that with that though, like, and I always think, Fiverr is such the elephant in the room. If Fiverr ever went after these companies, I mean, these people would have to say no to a lot of money. And I don't know if they would. I just think it's interesting that, you have to, same thing with LinkedIn, right? I mean, LinkedIn and Microsoft, I mean, and they were, the big news had come out, and I don't know if they were just pissed off at Fiverr, and that's why they said it back then, but, that they were going to try to compete with Fiverr by starting their own, freelance type of ability on LinkedIn. But I'm just saying, like, these companies, I mean, that's how they end up growing, right? Is after they get to a certain point, they acquire these other companies that are doing what they want. So I think what this means, and we can go on to the next thing, at least for me, is that I'll always be aware that, when you put I'm not going to ever do this and I'm not ever going to do that on something, to me, that's fine. It's okay. It's your business. And I'm totally cool with that, but always at least be aware of what's happening, because you never know, on the drop of a hat, and one announcement could change the way things flow. And one thing you might say, you never do something, all of a sudden you find you're doing it and you didn't even, you're not necessarily even had a choice. So I do think that's an interesting thing about these acquisitions and these things. But speaking of Voice 123, moving on, they when I interviewed Rolf, who's the CEO of Voice 123, who says he's going to remain the CEO for a while, but like you said, usually changes over time, not right away. I think that they came out with their report that they had done this massive year-long study on synthetic voices, AI.
Yeah.
And, I think that there was a period of time, especially there was a massive push, just like anything else, right? There was a massive push by AI companies. And, we were all, I mean, and I think we can't be fooled, because when they first started, you could tell that the AI companies, on a marketing standpoint, were trying to get their legs, right? Because they were marketing to voice actors. Okay. And a lot of the marketing was going to voice actors too. I was getting emails left and right, but those emails have stopped, which means that they have found we can't be a fool like AI stopped. It's just they figured out they need to stop marketing to voice actors. All right. Because voice actors are not, probably tired of getting dirty emails from voice actors. But with AI, you know what I mean? I know I have my own personal opinion, but I'm interested about your opinion on, with where, what is happening now with AI, what you're seeing on your end, like our customers asking for AI and things like that. That's always interesting to me. So what are your thoughts on, how it's influencing the industry today and coming up?
Yeah, we don't get a lot of clients saying, "Can I buy an AI voice from Voquent?" And obviously that's because we don't talk about offering that or suggesting that that's something that we would want to offer. But we do get a lot of clients who want us to help them to build out AI-based packages and what have you. And I think the thing is that we've generally felt pretty cautious about being involved in those projects. We have been involved in a few. We've been very careful. We've scrutinized the terms and conditions to a very, very deep level to make sure that there isn't.
When you're saying AI packages, do you mean like hiring voice actors to record?
Yeah. So voice actors get hired to use, to record a whole bunch of different words and sentences so that a synthetic voice can be built. I think the key thing is that voice actors everywhere do need to protect their voice from being exploited. And the way to do that is to make sure that the contract terms on which that recording is going to be used is absolutely explicit. And so if it isn't explicit, if it looks open-ended, then don't sign it and don't do it. Because at the end of the day, if your voice is going to be used, a synthetic version of your voice is going to be used for a particular purpose, you might agree that for the money that's involved and for where it's going to be used and how it's going to be used, you're okay with that. But if it's going to be used for something else that you're not aware of, and then, a lot of noise was made about Bev Standing. Obviously, her voice being used by TikTok without her knowledge, and then she finds out, and obviously, it was for an undisclosed sum, but she won that battle, which is great. That's a great victory for the voice acting community worldwide. At the end of the day, people need to know where their voice is being used, and it really comes back to this whole sort of, for a long time. And again, it's something that I think was, perpetuated by the P2P sites, which was, all rights in perpetuity, all mediums, just like that's it. That's the fee, accept it. And that's not a cool thing. It never has been, and it's specifically not cool when it comes to AI companies or companies that they call it AI, but it's really just synthetic voice. There's no intelligence at all that's going on behind these actual. It's not like they're talking to you. They're just reading out, versions of your voice. But a synthetic voice being used for anything, anywhere, I don't think any voice actor should agree to something like that ever. I think it's not good for the industry. It's not good for anyone. However, is there a place for AI voice? I think there is. I think that there is a genuine market for synthetic voices for people who can't afford a voice actor, but want to somehow get an audio-based version of text out to the rest of the world. One of the most common places we see synthetic voices being used is IVR. You'll hear telephone voice messages now, which are you can clearly hear that it's an AI voice. It's a synthetic voice.
And that doesn't new in that industry either.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great, but how great does it need to sound? I mean, if for us, our
being on hold for an hour.
Well, our telephone voice that we use, we obviously really happy with ours, but that's important for us because that's our business. But for someone else who's just trying to give out basic information, is it important to them? Maybe not. I think there is a genuine market for synthetic voice work. And I think that market will grow the wider market, because once somebody has that synthetic voice and goes, God, it sounds okay, but it would sound so much better if I could get a professional voice. There's a lot of people that are going to ask themselves that question, right. And that's going to create new opportunities. And so I think there's that to think about. I think the other thing is that there is going to come a stage where the tools exists for voice actors to use an AI version of themselves, to effectively sell, themselves almost like an off-the-shelf product where it can be tweaked and customized for, a bigger fee, but they've got a baseline that's doing, a lot of work for them. That's going to happen. And, it's going to get developed. There's going to be lots of different people who are going to make it possible. And I don't think that's a battle that should be fought against. So I think it's just one that should be very carefully scrutinized in terms of, who has the access to that voice. Is it you or is it someone else? As long as you have the access and you control it, that's okay.
I totally agree. I agree with that 100%. But I also think that there's another point too. And I always, I don't know. I've always been that guy that's been like, do you want to die on the hill and fall on your sword for something that, you might not have any control over, and what you don't a lot of times. However, I do think that, and I have to always go back to this. There is a fine line, I think, between being a voice actor or a performer and being a business owner. And it might actually not be that fine of a line, actually, but the reality is that, we are business owners. And to me, you know what I mean? If I see, it's like having the inside track to something, right? It's like you have insider trading knowledge. And if you're aware that something's going, and let's not make a mistake, AI is a train that's not going to be stopped. Where its final destination is, I'm not quite sure how far down the rabbit hole it will go. But if you tell me, hey, there's an opportunity for you to invest in something, I have to look at it as a business owner. And I think this is just my opinion. And this is why I love what we're doing, because I think a lot of people talk about, it's what is it going to do for the voiceover industry? What is it going to do for you as a business owner? Do you know what I mean? Yes, I think it's very important for us as good, as stewards in the community to care about the community. Absolutely. But at the same time too, you know what I mean? Again, it's just like something else. I mean, you don't, at least to me, opportunity is all around us. So either we fight the opportunities tooth and nail while other people are capitalizing on them and growing, or we just fight until the day we die. For what reason? I just think that there's another thing to be said too about just because we're voice actors doesn't mean we're not supposed to be business owners and find opportunities. I always say, if you're working as a voice actor and there's an opportunity that comes along, why do you just have to, be like, no, I don't do anything because I'm a voice actor? Well, that just doesn't make sense to me as a business owner, right? Because I want to invest in opportunities that come along that, are going to be successful. And I think that you're right. I always thought that if AI was smart, they would have gone through voice actors and said, hey, listen, we'd like to allow you to license your work to people and offer, this is a great idea, offer, because I always thought that this AI could have been, there were so many ways to bridge gap between pricing issues and things like that, right? I thought AI could do that, right? Because it makes a lot of sense to be able to offer cheaper voiceovers through AI, all right? And be able to charge your premium prices when you are going to do it live for someone, right? Because then they get that live direction from you, that real honest truth, as opposed to, AI. So I thought that would be a wonderful thing. And I think that will happen one day. I don't think it will happen with the AI companies. I think someone will come along and be like, hey, guess what? You can do this, just like we're talking about right now. And I would have been like, dang, I should have done something. Just like all of us, right? There's too much to do. But this is just my thoughts about it, about AI. What do you think?
I think that, I agree. I think that what you can't replicate is the human soul.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're listening to someone speak, you're listening to their soul. You're listening to their spirit. You're listening to who they are as a human being, their journeys and everything else. There's so much more to a voice than just simply words being spoken in a particular way. And it's that ability to resonate with a message, to resonate with a character, to resonate with something that is unique in a performance, a live performance or a custom performance. There's no AI voice that can do that or ever will be able to do that, because the AI isn't an AI. It's a synthetic voice. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a fake soul. It just doesn't have anything. You can't tell an algorithm, I want you to put more meaning and emphasis in this because of these reasons, because of this background. You can't tell it to imagine being in a specific circumstance that would drive a particular kind of emotion. You can do that in a live session. You can say, I want you to think, about this when you're speaking, because this is what's going to come out in your voice. You can't take an AI voice and say, we know that you have, suffered all this, or you've been through or endured and experienced this, and we really want to feel that in your voice. That's never going to happen. And so, how close are we to a synthetic voice being able to replicate a human soul? We're a long way away from that, a long way. Yeah. I mean, are we going to see something that we might say later on, wow, that's almost indistinguishable? Yes, to a degree. But not for the huge growing amount of content that the world is demanding right now. It's always going to sound flat form compared to a human voice. And even when it sounds great, it's still not going to sound good enough. And when we're all trying to stand out and be remembered, the last thing we want to do is sound like, 1,000 or 1,000,000 other people that all sound the same, because it's the same voice.
No, I totally agree. I agree completely. I want to move on to some other things here, because we've got a lot. And however, these topics, and I think this is great that we're going to talk about this, because, with a lot of what I do, like I said, end up representing myself. I teach and coach a lot of people how to represent themselves. But the more and more people I work with, you know what I mean? And more voice actors I work with. And of course, I'm from the stage industry. So, this is how it's done. But I want to dive into, I want to talk about agents. I want to talk about that big break idea. The first thing, I think it all revolves around, to me, what is success, and what is so what are the ingredients of success? But I think for the first thing is, that big break, what do you think from a voice actor standpoint, from people you see? I mean, because I know people in my group, what they, some people think a big break is there, but from you, what do you think that is? You know what I mean? What do you think a big break means for a voice actor?
Okay, so, the big break, everybody's got to have a dream, right? A dream that they're going to land a fantastic client, a fantastic opportunity, something that's going to elevate their career. It's going to elevate their persona, their identity. It's going to create, a whole cascading set of new opportunities. In the performing acting world, the big break has always been that first, acting job that was going to put them onto a bigger, and put them in front of a much bigger audience. And that audience is therefore going to get to know them, and therefore they're going to have more opportunities. More people are going to find out about them, and more people are going to want to leverage them, and more people are going to want to be in touch with them. And it kind of has that self-perpetuating effect. What's so different between that and any entrepreneur of any business looking for a really big client? You're running a business, and you're selling widgets or services, and you're doing it over and over and over, and it's always the same type of jobs, the same type of value, and you're always hoping that you're going to see some big one come along that's going to really change the game, that's going to really create a whole bunch of new opportunities, that's going to create a level of sustainable revenue, that's going to create consistency with the number of jobs you can perform or number of products that you can sell. It's none of that's any different. I think when it comes to the big break for voice actors, it is tougher because you don't have that on-camera, on-screen presence that a lot of people, we're visual creatures, remembers as much. And it's also, voice acting is also at odds with a couple of different factors. I mean, one, mocap plays a really important part of casting for video games. Not all. There's some characters that you're not going to be using mocap to represent some silly looking cartoon character. But if you're representing a player or a person, where your features on your face, your muscular build, your posture, your height, the way you walk, certain martial arts moves, mocap is going to play an important part. And therefore somebody who maybe have been a great voice but isn't physically cut out for the role isn't going to get that AAA video game job potentially. That's going to still go to maybe an actor who has got those qualities. I think the other thing is that there's a lot of people who are getting cast for video games and animation series who come from the acting world. And the thing is that they have big influential followings on their social media networks. It's part of their contract to talk about to their audience, to their fans, how great this next show or this next movie or this next series is going to be. And so when they get cast, it's actually helping to multiply the marketing effect that those games are looking for. That's why people are trying. That's why people will go to celebrities. And so I think the thing is that there is a bit of an overlap. There is people who can become a celebrity overnight because they happen to become, they get cast for a character for a video game that does really, really well. And that's an exciting and fantastic opportunity, particularly if they've never been an actor before, maybe even have no intention of becoming an actor, but it suddenly creates lots of new opportunities, and it's exciting. Those breaks exist. But I think that it would probably be foolish to get into the voiceover world without having any acting background, without having worked on screen, potentially with no interest of working on screen, and thinking that you're going to be one of the lucky ones, because you will be lucky. Yes, I mean, at Voquent, we'll have a lot of people doing very basic, jobs, internal use, recordings, but we also have some fantastic opportunities where, someone could get paid, I don't know, 25, $50,000 for an hour's recording, because it's going to be used on a global campaign for a huge brand. And that even for a commercial, that represents a big break. Is that going to lead to other commercials? Maybe. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I wanted to ask you, because I think you kind of touched on this. And this again is where I think voice actors have to be smart. And I'm going to say, and then, screen actors or stage actors, but we kind of, sometimes I feel like we got to be smarter, more business savvy, because I wanted to ask you, so like when a company comes to you, they want you to hire, they want to hire you and they want you to do voiceovers. Does that company ever say to you, we want to only work with voice actors who have worked with major brands? Has a company ever said that to you?
No, not to that general sense. There's been people who've said, oh, we want somebody who's kind of done something for this kind of industry.
Okay.
Particularly when it comes to like very specific types of reads, like for instance, medical explainers. If you haven't been doing them, you're probably not going to do them well.
But no, the reason why I brought that up is because this is exactly the point of what we're talking. Like I always talk about too. You know what I mean? And I do it as well, because it looks nice and fancy on your website, where you get to put nice little logos on your website that you've done all this. But I'm also, the people who know me, I'm also very practical about what, especially for new people coming in industry, who think that might have imposter syndrome or might have, what do I'm doing here, what I'm doing there. I don't have, I've not been hired by so-and-so to do anything. But I think this goes back to talking about what you're just saying. It's different between getting on, like where we hear the shows, about like, what is it, Woody Harrelson and, getting on Cheers, where he was almost going home, or, living out of his car. The same thing with, all these different actors, right? And they change their careers. However, it's very, voice acting is a part of the acting industry, of course, but it's just so different. And I think you're right about the visual aspect, but, you're hired by, this company. I do think that it doesn't mean, like just because you're doing all this doesn't mean that, you're going to be hired by all these other people. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting. Like, that's why I wanted to ask you, as soon as I could say, we only want to work with people who work with Ford. Well, that, I don't think that ever happens. I mean, like you said,
No.
we want to, know someone who has experience in that industry, which then, of course, though, it's still left up to you. I mean, I don't know if they're asking you for their resume and video. I mean, I don't know, but like maybe, but do you see what I mean? Like, I think that's a good thing for voice actors who want to have a career in voiceover, right? But don't, but think they got to have some major client in order to have a good business. I mean, I work with a lot of people who don't want to be famous, who just have a good living and enjoy life and do voiceover because it's fun.
So I think it's like, if you think about having a website as a voice actor and you create it and it looks amazing and it's demonstrating different samples or reels or whatever you're trying to do, but you're showcasing your talents. Most people at some stage, at some part of their website, will put in the testimonials. Here's my clients, here's some big logos, here's some big brands. Some people just like litter, they're a huge portion of a page with client logos. And I think that there is, the same thing applies to awards. I've won X awards this year, over the last decade, I've won, awards for this and this and this and this and this. What do those things mean to a client? Does the client care? I think they do, to the degree that it gives them a little bit of peace of mind. It gives them a bit of assurance. Right. But if you were to equate what percentage of that assurance that those customer logos or that previous work or those awards are going to offer in terms of someone making a decision, I wouldn't say it's more than 10%. I think it is about optimizing. It's good to have that, because 10% can make the difference, between one job and another job, or more jobs and less jobs. So yeah, it's good to do them. If you win awards, you should definitely talk about it. If you win if you have great, customers and great brands that you've done work with, of course you should talk about it. You should try to find a way to showcase it, but don't expect those things to do the heavy lifting for you in building your career, because they absolutely will not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do, again, I think that goes back to what you're talking about actors, right? If a brand wants to align themselves, with something that's noticeable or notable, they're going to probably hire an actor from the screen who has a massive following. And that goes back again to a whole bunch of things. These are things that excite me because, it's talking about your brand. It's talking about your recognition with a community, right? That transcends, the acting world, because, with the way our world is now, either A, you're going to build a community to where, you bring with you eyeballs, right? Because you're in a world that is all about eyeballs, the attention. You've got to have attention in order to be successful, no matter what you do. I always tell you 3 steps that I always tell people, right? You've got to be found. The first thing you do, you got to be found. Second thing is, once you're found, you got to be enticing enough for people to want to click on you, no matter where you are. When you're enticing enough people click on you, you got to be inspiring enough for people to want to buy from you. All right. You have to use these 3 things, and it goes in that order. And I think voice actors, we do so much of focusing on our voices and the acting, which is so vital and it's so important. Absolutely. But at the same time, I always said, it doesn't matter one hill of beans how fantastic you are if no one ever hears you. No one ever knows you exist. And the truth is, and I'm sure you can attest to this, maybe with some people that you've worked with, you know what I mean? You could suck, and if a lot of people see you, you still got chances to get hired. You might get hired a couple times.
Absolutely. That's
the reality of it is. And I think a lot of times a lot of people forget that, because, there's so much to be said about the craft, and there's a love there. I have a love for acting. My whole life I've had it, you know what I mean? And I've loved the stage, and I love voiceover and the sharing of messages and feelings in order to move people. That's always been a passion of mine, people to take action. But, which I think was what voiceover is all about, right? But at the same time, you know what I mean? Again, if no one knows I exist, it doesn't matter one bit how good I am. So I think that's another part of it. With moving forward into that, getting so we're talking about the big break, and we're talking about this. I think it's always interesting to me, the idea that getting an agent is, the pinnacle of a voice actor's career. At the same time, I am smart enough of a man to know that I don't know everything. And, I represent myself. I teach people how to represent themselves. But I also work with people who have loads of agents as well. But I've never gone after an agent myself. And I was always that guy who's like, well, if they want to work with me, they'll come after me. But what do you think about, actors? Because that's just something that intrigues me, you know what I mean? About, voice actors believing an agent to represent them is so vital to their career. What do you think in that sense? Do you think it's vital? Do you think that voice actors should strive for that? And do they offer really the best opportunities, or is it just part of it's another opportunity place?
That's it. There's a lot to think about when it comes to agents. Let's break down some of the core ones. First of all, there's always a sense of sort of excitement about being signed up with an agent. What does that mean? Again, that can fall back to, for the client, it's more of a kind of a credibility thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, here's my awards, here's my fantastic customers, oh, and here's my agent. These are all kind of tick in the box credibility things, but I wouldn't say that the 10% is increasing because you've got an agent, or even if you've got multiple agents. I think it's something that can add a little bit of additional weight to that, that criteria, but I don't think it represents a majority by any measure. It's not going to be the thing that does it. No one's going to, buy a voice job from someone because they have an agent. However, I think there is a misconception in the world, which is that the agents are generating tons and tons and tons of work, right? They're marketing their talent, and they're getting out there and they're doing all these things that the sites don't do, which is, market. It's actually the opposite. The sites are all marketing themselves very heavily, and the agents can't compete. They just don't have enough money. So all they do is have a site with some people on it and say, hey, these are our guys and they're great. They're amazing. You should use ours. You should use our people, not those other people who aren't very good. They're not good quality. Ours are the best. And agents often do represent tremendous, highly talented people. And that's not just from a voice acting perspective, but from an acting perspective as well. If you think about the day-to-day work that an agent does for a successful actor, not a voice actor, but a successful actor, well, they're going to be getting that actor. There's a lot of people who might want that actor to be in their movie or their TV series or their animation or whatever. And so they're getting scripts thrown at them constantly. And the agent typically has the job of reading through these scripts and determining whether or not these are the kinds of scripts that resonate with what that actor wants to be doing. Some of them really like to really push themselves and try on different roles and really challenge themselves as a performer. And then there's others that like to kind of, they like to just get work wherever they can get it. And often that they end up becoming typecast. And so a lot of the work that a good agent does is around the negotiation and the qualification of stuff that's already coming to the actor. They're just acting as a kind of a sort of a gatekeeper in some ways to make sure that the actor is able to work with stuff that really works and to make sure that it's correctly paid. But is that agent, again, going out generating tons of opportunities? I think if you have an agent that's working with a lot of talented performers, then they will get earshot of other opportunities. They will get involved and get told or get asked about other opportunities that extends outside the boundaries of maybe the person they originally thought was going to be involved in a project. And to that extent, agencies and agents do have opportunities. They have opportunities that actors wouldn't necessarily get to. There's a lot of casting directors that go directly to agents and say, here's a job, we'd like to know who from your roster would be good for it. But the bulk of the work that pays isn't going through agencies or agents. It's not. And so if people start to think that the agency represents the pinnacle of their career as a voice actor, that's definitely a misconception, because there's too many successful voice actors right now that are agentless or have a plethora of agents all over the world, all representing their interests in different markets, different regions, and different mediums and what have you. And so I would say, yes, definitely. If you get approached by an agency, you should take it seriously and make sure that you make the most of that opportunity. But on the other side, I wouldn't go around waiting for an agent or hunting down an agent to represent you so that they can get you work. That ain't going to happen. A lot of them, is particularly in the voiceover world, they're like, well, how much work are you getting? Because we'd like a percentage of that. And we want exclusivity, and we don't want you on other agency rosters, and we don't want you on other sites. And therefore you have to be exclusive to us. And that actually, that's actually counterproductive to what some voice actors are doing. When they've built up a lot of direct clients, they're on a lot of platforms, they get work from a lot of different sources. And now they're told that if they want to be represented by this special agency, then they're going to have to remove their presence from all these different places. That's not going to work.
I've seen this, and I've seen it. And it's sad to me. It's sad to me. And I'm not, it's, I always believe in the end, it's the voice actor's choice. And I think that's what you're talking about, exclusivity as well. That kind of takes away from that choice, that ability. And of course, again, like you said, the argument would be that it opens other opportunities that you wouldn't normally have. However, that probably was very true 20, 30 years ago, maybe 30 years ago.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? It's just not the case now, especially when the people who are running these companies now are, grew up with Amazon, grew up with grew up in an internet world, living in the internet. You know what I mean? It is just not the same, and everyone can argue about, well, you're never going to get this type of job, or you're never going to get that type of job. Now, I would beg to differ on that. However, if you give that credence and say, okay, well, that's true, but how many of those types of jobs are there really available?
Yeah. I mean,
you're going to have hundreds of thousands of people fighting over a couple of jobs. What are they going to do for the rest of the time? How are they going to feed their families? I mean, I just, it's a battle that makes little sense to me when you think about the reality, the truth behind what is actually happening, not the, we're living in a pretend world, in my opinion.
I think that if you get an opportunity to be on the roster of an agency or an agent, then you should definitely consider the merits of it, and you should definitely see how that's going to work for you. And it probably will be good for you, without a doubt. But just be careful about the exclusivity clause. There's too many voice actors that feel that their career is taking a downward trajectory because of the agency they joined, as opposed to an upward trajectory. I'm not saying that's always the case. There's some people that love their agents, that they get more work from the agent than they've ever had, and they never thought that they were going to be able to have made it until they got their agent. And some people have got great relationships with their agents, and those do exist, but I do think that they're fewer and further between. That nowadays it's getting signed up to an agency. If it's non-exclusive, is great. It means that your voice is going to be heard in another place even more. But getting signed up to an exclusive agent, that represents potentially a downward trajectory, not necessarily an upward trajectory, if you've already got a lot of work. And the ironic thing is that if you don't have a lot of work, a lot of agents won't be interested in you. Well, why is that? Why is it that an agency that's got all this tons and tons of work isn't going to be interested in working with a voice actor unless they're already getting tons of work? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Well, that's because they want to optimize the work that you're getting to try to negotiate better on your behalf and get a better deal and get more usage and, be that kind of gatekeeper again to the work that you're already getting. And they want to capitalize on the fact that you can only be found either on their website or potentially on their website or your direct website, but nowhere else.
Right. Exactly. Why would you need someone if you're, so they look at it as a good opportunity for them as well. I think that's where, but I agree with you completely. I do want to point out though, cause I'm always like, what's the other, side, put myself in someone else's shoes. I do think though, that there is a point where there's a big part of this, and we haven't talked about it at all, and it's so important for every business, is what are your goals? And also knowing yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm very aware that my ambitions and my dreams and my thoughts are going to be way different than someone else's. And also the feelings that I have of, do I want to, am I a person, if I know myself, am I a person that feels more secure relying on myself to go get business and to build systems and to do things? Or do I feel more secure, going with someone else who has done those things, you know what I mean? And I can trust them to do them because, I'm just not that good at it. And I'm aware that there are all sorts of different types of people. And some people are going to feel more secure doing it a different way. And that's good. That's okay too. And I think that's to me, that's one of the most important things, is to know yourself, right? Know what you're trying to accomplish and what you feel you can and cannot do. I think we're getting old enough now to realize, I ain't changing much. I mean, I'm going to be, we're going to learn, right, and grow, but I'm kind of set with who I am and what I believe in, right? So I think the more I know about myself, I think the better I can make decisions about whether do I trust myself to do this, or do I really know deep down inside if I tell myself I'm going to do it, it ain't never going to get done. Do you know what I mean? Or what's the realistic version of this? Could I really do 25 things in one day? Probably not. But I'm going to tell myself I can, because I believe I still believe I'm 21 and I'm Superman. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do think that is a part of all of this, because I look at everything that we talked about today, and it just strikes me again is, what is your goal? What is your dream? What are you trying to accomplish? If your goal was to be with an agent, because that's actually your goal, well, great. If that's your goal, to be with an agent, go, that's awesome. But was the goal to be with an agent and make a lot of money? Or be with
right? Absolutely,
right? Because and I think that's what it would help a lot of us to have something to clarify. Wait a minute, what is this really my goals, or was my goal really to wake up at 10 in the morning and have a cup of coffee and do a couple hours of work and then go and hang out for the rest of the day? Well, that's great. That could be your goal, but that's a different goal than saying I just want to have an agent. Or I just want to be famous. Those are all different types. Those are massive differences. Or I just want to be able to have a good living, or I want to work from my house, or I want to be my own boss, or I want someone else, I want to work from my house, but still be employed. So someone else kind of tells me what I need to do, right? That's really important stuff to know. And I think a lot of times we don't clarify that with ourselves.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And, if we a lot of people talk about being in the voiceover business as being an entrepreneur, right? And I think that if that's really what your pursuit is, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, then you shouldn't be looking for security and safety and consistency from one hand that helps feed you. You should be looking at diversifying and growing out all your revenue streams, growing out all the different places that you can market yourself. As a business, if you have one great client, would you rather have that one great client, or would you rather have that revenue cut up between 3 great clients, so that if one drops out, you've got the other 2 to fall back on? Well, if you're really pushing yourself, you should be thinking, well, I want 10 great clients. So if one of those drops out, I got the other 9. So you're, as business people, we should always be looking to create resilience. And resilience doesn't come from narrowing all our sources. It comes from expanding them. And therefore, success is based often on how elastic you are as a business person, not how, how you might idolize an ideal of how work is going to get to you if you just get it to that point where you can say you've made it. I've made it. I've got an agent. That's it. So then what? So what was it for? Why did you want an agent? Because of something else, typically because you wanted bigger jobs, you wanted better jobs, you wanted to be appreciated or respected, or you wanted to be able to work in a particular field or whatever. If an agent represents
there's nothing wrong with that. Is that as long
as it represents a route to market, to a source of business that you're trying to tap into, then good. But if it's just for the sake of itself as an idea, drop it. Think about how you can be successful in other ways. Those opportunities, you get enough work, the agencies will want to work with you. They'll want to be involved with you. You're not getting enough work, they won't touch you with a 10-foot pole. That sounds, kind of like, well, that's great. So I'm only going to get an agent once I've already made it, and then I don't need one. Agencies and agents will represent value in different ways. But it's not something that someone in an early stage in their career should be thinking is going to be a fast track to success. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think getting into the towards the end here, what we talking about, man, it's been a lot of, we could talk forever about this stuff, I think. But I would say that as we're talking about the agencies and as we're just discussing all this and the differences, it always strikes me as, I don't know, really honestly confused. And about the divisions in the industry. what are your, I mean, and on a global scale, I mean, so many of us who work, you know, a lot of us, but we tend to stay within our country a lot of times, but, you know, Voquent has a footprint all over the world. So what do you see, you know, and the differences? Because I know, you know, as I work with more people, even a lot more people in the UK, and I, you know, and help coach a lot more voice actors from the UK as well, and working with people, it's just there's so, you know, the communities in different countries are very different, or, you know, even within a country they're different. But what are your thoughts on that? You know, that there seems to be a disparity or something between, you know, the different communities, and it always seems to revolve around this price idea. But I do wonder if it's more than that, you know, because I mean, people can be that angry over jobs they would have never taken anyways. So I just wonder if it's more than that. What are your thoughts on this guy? I mean, price represents something, you know what I mean? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I didn't myself know prior to starting Voquent how cliques had existed for a long time in the industry. And even though voiceover is kind of cross-border, and it breaks down all those kind of national barriers, I wasn't aware of the fact that, you know, there was just a lot of different types of communities that have different ways of operating and different ways of looking at things. And as I started to realize where they were and who they were and how they operate and how, you know, the things that are binding them together, it did make me start to think differently about how we need to work with people internationally, because I think it's important to respect communities, you know, and the way they want to work. And if a particular country has a strong community that wants to work in a particular kind of way, I think it's important to respect that and to work with that. Otherwise, it's working against you. But I think from the perspective of what do these different kind of communities, when they become more kind of isolated from others, represent? Well, I guess the thing is that if a group of people are really artistic and they have come to see what they do as an art form, and therefore that art form fetches a high price because it's good art, right? It's not you know, sort of basic sort of churn them out paintings or whatever. It's like really high quality stuff. Mm-hmm. They don't want their work to be compared with stuff that is just getting regurgitated in some print shop somewhere. I'm using canvases and artwork as an example, but that's the sort of the more classic sort of idea of what art is. But I think there's a lot of voice acting communities that represent different things and work in different sort of areas. And so if a group of voice actors are all working together in a very sort of gig-centric marketplace, you know, like, you know, Anthony, you've always had a lot of people from different platforms and helped those people learn how to make those platforms work for them. Mm-hmm. A lot of those people aren't focused so much on the art form as they are on just how to make sure that it's consistently bringing in enough work for them to get better and to generate revenue so that they can turn it into a living. And that's a very different mindset to people who've already been making a very good living out of it, right, and see their work as a fine art. And as soon as those boundaries start to get blended to the extent that a client goes, oh yeah, I can just get a great voice actor on this site here, whatever, it doesn't really matter, you know, they're all the same, then, you know, that's not good, because they aren't the same. There are people who are exceptionally accomplished and experienced, and they can be found on platforms, but there's more of them that can be found on agency sites, and more of them that can be found operating independently with very strong websites with a lot of really good material, great backgrounds. And so, you know, it's if a client is getting less fussy about quality, then it kind of degrades the quality of the really fine work. And I think that's where there's a kind of an us and them scenario that gets built up between different communities and has done for decades. I think those are becoming more visible now that the internet is really exploding with tons of people looking for work in the voiceover industry. I mean, COVID obviously tons of actors thought, well, if I can't be an actor, I'll do voice acting from my home, because that's a revenue stream that I know I can work on. There's a lot of people who want to be in voiceover work and are in voiceover work now than there was even 3 years ago. Definitely. Significant amount more. And with that comes different mindsets and mentalities. And I think that the more inclusive any community is about other members of that community, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of where they're going, regardless of what their opinions are on what's a good piece of, voiceover work and what's a poor quality piece of work, or, what's a good rate, what's not a good rate, what's a fair rate, those things, those questions are always going to, come up. Those discussions are always going to get had. But I think that it's really important for people to remember that we're all human beings and everybody needs to work together. And at the end of the day, it's the more inclusive you are to people across the whole spectrum, the better.
No, and absolutely. I totally agree. I would think something that just popped in my mind too, that I do think, as we look at the global aspect of this, and we've had this conversation and a VO's journey. And I think it's a great conversation to be had, as we do transcend barriers of countries. I'm learning, more and more, depending on what country you're in, especially if you've grown up there, you've lived there for a long time, you're very aware of how, the people of that area feel, that country feel about issues, about, individuals versus the collective, the group, and that does vary quite significantly from country to country, whereas in the US, a lot is very, there's a lot of people in the US that are very, very big on the individual, the individual's rights before the group rights. Right. Whereas there's a lot of other places in the world where the group rights are very, very more important, sometimes more than the individual rights. Right. Because it's for the good of the group. And I think that also has a feel for things. Right. Because if you think about it, if I was concerned about, that I must toe the line so that the group is going to be, that people that I don't even know might still be successful, or what I view as successful with a certain rate or price might be different than, listen, if I'm a business owner and I'm looking out for me and my family, do you know what I mean? I'm going to do the best I can do for me and my family as opposed to something else. Now, as I say it out loud, yes, one can seem very selfish as well. You know what I mean? I'm always a person that I refuse to just believe one way is the highway all the time. I think there's a medium there. I think we can be good stewards of the community, our community as voice actors, right, in the business, but at the same time also be good and savvy and smart business owners. I think there is a happy medium there. But that just made me think though too, because I do think that is a mix too. When you have communities from all over the world starting to come together too, you're like, hey, that's not how we look at things. Now we're talking about philosophies too. We're talking about, and I think especially with the UK and the US, there's a lot of, there are some different philosophies with the way things should, you know what I mean? And that's okay. I think it's great. I think it makes us better. Because it allows us to learn from each other more so and grow, you know what I mean? But I think at the same time, that takes an open mind too, and to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to look at another point of view, or maybe I'm not wrong, but I also agree with you too. And that's okay as well.
I think that there's a history of unions that plays an important part in the influence of how jobs are priced and what's a fair price, and where some of these differences end up coming into play. The thing is that, if you look at SAG-AFTRA in the United States, is that's been long established for a long, long time to protect workers' rights, because, actors were getting exploited. They were getting exploited. They weren't getting paid anywhere near what they should be getting paid. They were getting exploited. And so the union represented a way to combat that.
Yes.
And equity in the United Kingdom is existed longer than SAG-AFTRA.
Sure.
It was actually formed before it, but I don't think it's protected voice actors to the same degree that SAG-AFTRA did if you were SAG-AFTRA represented. There's lots of different reasons for that. It's not a failing on the part of the people who in equity have tried to do things in that respect. It's more just to do with cultures and the way business is done and what have you. But for a long time, having a union membership was, again, is similar to that kind of tick in the box. I have an agent, I'm represented, I have all these great clients, I've won all these awards, and it just so happens that I'm a member of X union, right? And in America that was SAG-AFTRA, in the United Kingdom that was equity, and obviously there's counterparts for all of these in all the sort of major economies. And with those unions runs the concept of rate standardization, which is that there is a minimum rate that people must pay. And the problem is that the freelance platforms that have come to exist, particularly the ones that are very gig orientated, where, and again, Fiverr, they make work out of voice acting work. So, they do voice acting jobs. Obviously, they'll commission those, as will Upwork. But do they care about the voice acting communities? Do they care about voice actors? No, they've made it unequivocally clear that they really don't. They just care about the gig and getting someone to fulfill that gig. That's what they care about. And I think that the problem with that is that if you don't care about the communities that are serving these industries, then it does have a degrading effect on the quality of the pay for the people who are actually performing it. So these big sites are generating these huge audiences and saying, hey, we can get all your great work done here. You don't need to go out to an agent. You can come to us and just get it direct. But you're not getting it direct. You're getting it through that site where they're all competing against each other at a much lower rate. And that represents a sort of a real problem for not just voice actors that have worked with agents for a long time at a particular rate, where they suddenly feel like they're being undermined by people who are maybe getting a lot of experience under their belt, but doing so at a much lower rate, and therefore educating the market into thinking that they can get much higher quality voice actors at a lower rate, because to a degree they can. But it's represented a problem for SAG-AFTRA as well, because SAG-AFTRA hasn't been able to deliver anywhere near the amount of work that it used to be able to deliver as a source of business.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, the reality is that, that's the reality. And I don't remember what it was. Whether it was a podcast or it was a video I did a while ago. And I talked about, I wonder what my career would have looked like in voiceover if, SAG-AFTRA or a representative or a group from SAG-AFTRA reached out to me as a new voice actor and said, hey, we have a program for new voice actors where we help them get work and we help educate them and, we coach, but no such group exists, or not to an extent where they, are interested in helping the people they want, they're, and in all fairness, SAG-AFTRA, I mean, I am very actually thankful for the union in making, giving legitimacy to a lot of actors throughout, its history, especially with helping with benefits and things like that. But over time, things change, and I don't think it's the same organization it was when it was started and what it intended to be. But that's another conversation. But more so, I think that it's become something like that. I believe, we do need a community. We do need, a group of people helping each other. I'm all for that. But I agree 100%. I think it's a challenge because a lot of these places, I don't know if they were just hoping that it would go away, or they didn't know, and more so maybe they didn't know how to approach it. If I'm an agency or an agent and all these people are flooding in, and I typically only have X amount of jobs for these voice actors who are well known, I can't even deal with these other people, these new people. You know what I mean? I can't even, and I don't have jobs. There's no way I'm going to give a $20,000 job opportunity to a person who just started 3 months ago. And I'm not even sure if they're using a USB mic or not. Like, I don't know what they're, they might be using a USB mic and I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, and again, not that anything's wrong with that, but that's what I think has the market has missed out. The voiceover market or the voiceover industry has in effect unintentionally created their own problem that a lot of them are frustrated about. And I think we as a group could come together and talk how to make that better. And hopefully one day we will be able to. But that's still, if you, that's, we won't talk about that in this podcast, but that's still seemingly an issue for some people.
I think that the thing is that if the interests of an established voice actor is to maintain, the strength of their product, the strength of their service, the strength of their rates that they charge at, and another voice actor is just getting started and doesn't care about what other people are earning or expect that people should come in at an entry level. They just care about getting enough work to get better and enough work to generate enough income for them to quit their day job or go part-time or start becoming something. Right. And I think that there is a gap, right? If somebody starts to going on to a bunch of freelance gig sites and they're generating all their revenue through those sources, they're not building up a website. They're not trying to get direct work. They've literally become a 1 or 2 trick pony, right? So they're getting all their work from the same site, and they've really just put all their eggs in that one basket. I mean, that represents a threat to them as an individual, because that might not always favor them. They might not always have that same position. They might not always be able to get a look in or get chosen as much or whatever. But I think the thing is they're not building enough redundancy. But the thing is that if a handful of sites represents all your sources of income, it's not just a bad place to be as a business. It also represents a really difficult bridge to cross if you want to get to a point where you can actually establish a better work-life balance. I mean, if you're selling voiceover jobs at $50 to $100 a gig, and you're doing that multiple times a day, every day for years, yeah, you might be making lots of money. But holy Christ, how much work do you need to do before you can actually start to look at your life and go, this is really great. I'm really happy with who I am and what I'm doing. And the work-life balance comes from being able to go ahead and charge more for being good at something. And that can be difficult to do if charging more means that you're not going to get a look in, because your source of revenue is one that's based heavily on the competition of price. So the thing is that establishing that bridge to other ways of doing things, where you can charge more for your services and actually do less work for that money, it's an important bridge that any professional needs to find a way to build. Because if you're doing all the services yourself, you can only do so much. You can't.
There's always going to be a gap. And with that that's a perfect lead in to something that I love and is very passionate to me, and that's coaching. It's always been a big part of my life as an educator too. But how do you see, with the voice actors, the sheer amount of voice actors that you work with and the clients you work with, how important is coaching, for the voiceover community and the future of voiceover?
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? I mean, it's almost a silly question, isn't it, Anthony? It's like it's so important.
But I think a lot of people do wonder, hey, again, it's another thing of I'm just starting out, or I'm making, I've been doing this for 20 years. And, I've done so much stuff. Maybe I've hit a hard patch, or maybe I don't know what I don't know what this new market means, or how do I approach it? Or I was gone for, 20, 25 years. I'm coming back and it's different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all know coaching, but more so like, also, what is what coaching should you seek out? That kind of stuff. I mean, I think that's and when do you start? When is a good time to get coaching?
Okay. I mean, when's a good time? In my opinion, as soon as possible. How often? As often as possible. who do you start with? Where do you start? That's an impossible question to answer, only because everybody comes at things from a different angle and a different perspective, has a different objective, has different goals. I think that there is no one perfect coach. Okay. There's no one perfect coach that's going to, be amazing for everybody. It's not going to happen. What you're going to find is that there's certain coaches that work really, really well with maybe a greater scope of people than others. So maybe that they're better able to understand the general requirements and general needs, and have a better sense of things that allows them to kind of navigate working with people of all levels of experience. But there's other coaches that, they really only want to work with people who are trying to level up their game, who are already at a very experienced level. They don't, there's certain coaches who are exceptionally good, and they don't want to have really basic conversations with people about how to get into the industry. They just see that as a nightmare. And so I think that if somebody is seeking coaching, and they should, and they always should, what I would say is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's a little bit like the sites and like the agencies. Try to basically spread bet. Coaching is all about forming a relationship. If you get a coach who you feel you've got a really good relationship with, you feel that you're learning things, you feel that you're getting a sense of really, a real sense of reward from working with that coach. And that might be because of the results that you're getting, or it might just be because you feel that you're gaining a level of confidence in yourself and what you can do as a result of that, or you're gaining a lot of information and knowledge. Because there's people out there who claim to be coaches who aren't good coaches. That's a fact. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact. That happens in all industries. And that's why I think it's important to spread bet just a little bit. If you're getting coaching and you're thinking, God, things aren't really working out great, there's a good chance that you probably need a better coach. Maybe one that's more up your street for what you're trying to do, that can help you meet your objectives. There's some people that focus on a coaching perspective purely from a marketing perspective. They don't tell you how to be a better voice actor. They just give you a much better sense of what sites you can get started on, or what agencies you can join and why, and what you need to do that. Or there's people who will provide coaching in terms of how you can set up your website better, and how you can optimize it better for SEO, and how you can, what people are listening for. There's people who focus from a coaching perspective purely on reels and making your reels really, really great. Even though at Voice Actor, at Voquent, we don't even work with reels. We want samples. There's people who will help build up a really great library of samples, who will tell you about the importance of not, tying yourself to a reel, because you're going to get typecast by the first read on that reel and lose opportunities. Yes. So there's so many different coaches. It's really, really important to make sure that you've got one that either makes you feel really, really good about what you're doing, you're really happy with what you're doing. And if you don't, then try to budget for at least a couple of different options, so that you can form those really important relationships. At the end of the day, the relationship with your coach is like a very important professional friendship. And that's what you're really seeking. And if you don't feel that you're getting results from that, or if you don't feel empowered by that, then you need to keep looking. But if you are getting that, then work with them more, because that's what it's all about.
All right. So listen, so this is a big reason why I started the Academy. Okay. So like a VO's Journey Academy. I've been a voice acting coach for a long time, a lot of, one-on-one mentoring voice actors. But I've always been a firm believer that you shouldn't have one coach, you should have a couple, right? In different areas. And, because there's going to be a bunch of, different things, just like you mentioned. The Academy, a VO's Journey Elite Academy, I wanted, but backtracking to what you were saying about, you needing the different coaches. The challenge then comes in, of course, is like, okay, well, I built a relationship with this coach, but I'm aware that this coach is only working on, for example, helping me with my DAW or getting better at the production aspect of what I'm doing. Well, I need to work on my voice acting, or I've been working on my voice acting. This is great, but I'm still not getting any business. So I got to work with somebody who's going to help me now get business with all the voice acting work I've been doing, right? Like there's all these things. So, I want to put together, but then it's hard to go out and build, finding a coach can be challenging enough. Finding 3 or 4 or 5, that work can be really hard. So that's why I started the Academy, to help to have all of these things that, when we do like voice acting, marketing, production, business systems, accountability, and really cool. We recently just added a brand new voice acting coach from the UK. So she's actually helping UK voice actors because it's a different market, I think, and and a different different styles. So I wanted to work with someone who could help people in the UK market. So I think that that's something that's really exciting about the Academy. I know I kind of totally just like veered off on the subject to talk about the Academy, but that's something that I firmly believe in is education. I have my whole life. And what do you like from your point of view, with voice actors? I mean, have you seen the benefit of coaching for voice actors?
Oh yeah, of course. I don't know any successful voice actor that hasn't got coaches that they swear by.
Yeah.
And I think it's what it's the honesty of the coaching that matters most. What you want to be in a situation where if you're working with a coach, you have an understanding of what they're going to be able to help you with and what they're not going to be able to help you with.
Absolutely.
So I think that if any coach is upfront about where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are, and maybe not necessarily their weaknesses, but just what they're not going to be going through, what they're maybe not good at, or maybe what they're not going to teach. It's not part of that. It's having an understanding of that is a lot better for someone who's trying to learn.
Yes.
And a student effectively, because they need to know, right, I'm building a strength that is about marketing here, not about performance, or I'm building a strength in my accents, not about, or my vocal range, not about how to get more business. Where things get, it's where things get blurry that it becomes problematic, because the expectation, it can't be met. A coach can't be like, oh, I'm going to teach you all there is to know about business and you're going to be hugely successful. And I'll teach you how to do the perfect accents and I'll teach you how to have a fantastic vocal range and I'll teach you how to do all your best warm-up methods.
Later, 10 years later.
I mean, someone might be able to do that, but that's a lot of coursing work. That's not just like one session. That's not like even 10 sessions. That's like a huge number of sessions.
That's like 1 in a billion for a person who do that effect. I mean, that just doesn't exist.
But I think the thing is that if somebody's never had a coach before, the danger is they're probably going to have a kind of an expectation like that. This coach is going to give me the keys. I'm going to get this reel done, and this coach is going to create a reel that's going to just generate business. The problem is the reel isn't going to generate business. Right. Exposure to that reel will generate business.
Exactly.
Exposure to your audio will generate business, but the existence of it will not. Oh man, I've just blown $500 or $1,000 on this amazing reel, and then it's not so amazing because nobody's paid me for work. Well, how many people have heard the reel? Well, if it's only a handful, well, it's no surprise that you haven't been picked. Your reel could have been garbage, but like you said before, if enough people have listened to it, there's still a chance that people are going to pick you.
Right.
So it's all about exposure, and it's really, really important to know who to talk to about increasing exposure, and focusing on that is something that's completely separate to how good your stuff sounds and how well you can perform it.
No, absolutely. And I think that's why you need it both. You need all of it, because when you get exposure, then you want to win the work. So it needs to go hand in hand, I think. So that's as exciting to me about the Academy as well. And we're also, so I'm going to do a shameless plug right now. We're also offering, like the first month, like it's like a 50% off. There'll be a link below if you guys are interested. And it's really cool because, I really worked hard to find coaches in these areas, that were fantastic, fantastic in voice acting, fantastic in production, people who actually have done a lot in the industry, and who share the idea of, listen, we want to work with all types of people to help them grow their business, whether they're starting out from scratch or whether they've been in the industry for a while and they just want a tune-up or they want to get some more work. I think that's important. And also create an atmosphere. And I want to talk to you because we've been talking about this, of a place where you can go and not be judged about you just beginning or about where you get your work from or about what. And that is not to say that you have to agree. We work with a lot of people who don't want to be on platforms. You know what I mean? We work with a lot of people who would rather be on platforms and not work with agents and vice versa, and who want to do direct work and want to do all this other stuff. And I think from all this conversation we've had today, and what your thought is, I mean, Voquent too, to me, is a great place. It's an opportunity, right, for voice actors. But going to Voquent and expecting Voquent to be the place that's going to support your family is not, it's kind of reckless, just exactly what you were saying before, I mean, it can be a great place and you can get some really amazing work from Voquent. But, I'm not going to wake up and be like, if I don't get a job from Voquent in a couple of months, I'm going to, say I suck at voiceover. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not, it's one opportunity amongst an ocean of opportunities.
Yeah, that's so important. There's never going to be a shortage of people who have different expectations. There's, we've had our fair share of people over the years, people like, oh, I've been on Voquent, I put up samples, but I've not got, anything more than that one job or, whatever, or I haven't even got any jobs, or I only got 3 jobs this month, or I only got, 1 job this year. And everyone's got their own kind of metric of how they see themselves and see the platform as working for them or whatever. And yeah, I can definitely understand, particularly if they were paying like on a pay to play site to get access to opportunities. And they're not getting, their money's worth. They're not getting anything back. They're just paying into a vacuum. Then, yeah, I think that's not great, is it? But at the end of the day, it's all about the expectation you have of yourself.
Yeah.
Some people believe that if they get to this point that they've won an award, that's because their voice is so amazing that they're going to get picked on average more than somebody else who speaks with a similar accent or a similar tone or has a similar kind of pitch to their voice. The reality is it's not true. Unfortunately, it's not. The voices of the world are celebrated in their uniqueness. And yes, some people can have a very distinct sound that's attractive. It might be trendy for a little while. There's any number of things, but nobody's voice is like, oh my God, if I don't have their voice, it's just, we can't do it. We can't do the project. We can't animate this game. We can't have our character isn't going to be, playable in the game because we couldn't get that one voice. They didn't agree to it. Sorry, that doesn't happen. You can always recast really quickly and get something else. They might not be the same. They might not bring the same qualities, but they will be unique. They will be special, and likely they will be talented, particularly if you're paying well enough for the job. So it's at the end of the day, if a voice actor says, why am I not getting enough work? I could put that question back and saying, well, why aren't you doing enough to market yourself that I'm not having to have a conversation with you about how we're apparently supposed to supply you tons and tons of jobs as opposed to any of the other 17,000 people that are registered. You should only get the work. They shouldn't get the work. They don't deserve it, but you do.
Well, yeah. And then it goes back again. Of course, to me, it goes right back again to knowledge. Is because me being a teacher, I always like my mind works like, okay, pops up like, okay, bam, there's a challenge, right? Okay. So it's like marketing. We got to market ourselves. Okay. Well then how do I do that? Right. Like that's how my mind works, So then again, there's a knowledge gap. And that's another thing too. Asking, I mean, I know we're shooting the breeze here. We gotta call it. People are gonna be like, it's enough, for goodness sake, you two. But I think that there's understanding what questions to ask, even what questions to ask of yourself. That's a skill and a very valuable skill to hone and to learn, it means, because we can ask the wrong questions. I've talked about this too, asking why I'm not successful is a very destructive question, I think, because, you're asking a question about your faults or what's wrong with you, trying to figure out what's wrong, all right, with you, as opposed to, how can I do better? Or what can I do to be successful? Like, what is the action I can take, not me focusing on the negative parts of myself. And I'm not saying we ignore growing, but I do think asking the correct questions. Okay, so I've identified, I think, right? I might think that I need to learn how to market better. So what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to learn from? Where can I get these skills? Right? It's a good question. Asking the right questions, is
Yeah,
so important to success.
absolutely. If you spend all your time, it's good to ask questions like, if you have an expectation that you'll be successful, then you need to ask that question, why am I not successful enough? Why am I not generating the success of whoever it is I'm comparing myself to? We live in a world where we're on social media every day, and we see people going on about the amazing clients they've got. Oh, that's my 5th booking today, and I'll just go ahead and wrap that one up before I go get myself a bite to eat, and then get to work with my new German client or my new Japanese client. And wow, it's all go here. I hope everything's good for you guys. Haha. Right? Except that it's not. There's lots of people who are like, I'd like to just get one job. What on earth? This is not right. And that creates a lot of sort of resentment, because at the end of the day, people all want to be valued and have work streams and have opportunities, and it's not equal. We don't live in a landscape where that happens equally. It's a competitive landscape. And again, you have to remember, as a business, to be successful as a business means that you need to figure out what you're good at, and find clients that will want to work with you because of what you're good at, and then expand that client base. And, if you spend all your time constantly being negative, asking about, why you're not getting more work from one place or another place, or why your agent sucks so bad because they haven't given you enough jobs, or, how that web designer was really awful because you haven't created tons of leads from your website, or whatever, whatever the place is. Yeah, I'd say definitely you got to focus on positive things, positive, progressive things, and just keep looking forward and keep taking those steps, and don't keep looking to the side and behind you and looking at all the people you're competing against, because there's always somebody who's doing better than you. There's always somebody who's moving faster, growing more, getting more jobs, doing less jobs for more money, making it rich, and be happy for those people, because one day that could be you too. Be happy for those people who are having success. If somebody's going online and saying, hey, this is something really amazing I've done, there's nothing wrong with liking that person's work. There's such this kind of aversion to, oh, I don't like that. I'm not gonna like that because they didn't do X for me, or they never liked my stuff, or they didn't follow me. I'm not gonna follow them. I'm not gonna grow their fan base while I sit here and rot. You got to be more than that. You got to be better than that. You like lots of people's stuff, people will like you back. Okay.
Just like, perfect example. Just like owning a restaurant, right? If you own a restaurant, are you just never going to go eat at any other restaurant? Like, you're going to be like, because you own a restaurant, every other restaurant, there's just no way you could support any other type of food or any other type of, some other business that's doing something good. I mean, there are people who do feel like they're betraying something, if they like something else. But I do think that comes from a place of scarcity as opposed to a place of abundance. Do you know what I mean? And if you're a person who looks and says, gosh, there's no work out there. There's just not enough work. Do you know what I mean? I just look at the landscape and say, my God, there is so much work out there. It is unreal how much, work is going on every single second of every single day all over the world. Do you know what I mean? There is more than enough work for everybody. But it's how you look at it. And I do think the last thing I want to end up on, and this is really important to me, is I always think what would have happened to me, and I know this is crazy, but if I had joined a different Facebook group. And I think that what I'm getting at about it is not not Facebook group, but just a group in general. We've talked about communities, and it's important to me, with people who are listening to know that, listen, if you're in a community of other voice actors and, you see a lot of negativity, every community is, we're all going to be, we have rough days, we have good days and bad days, and that's okay. But if you're if you happen to be in a community where you feel like the overall tone is negative, or there's a worry that there's not enough, and that the industry sucks and things are horrible, you have to understand. It goes back to what our parents used to say, right? You become who you hang around. And the reality is I really do believe this to be true. You want to put yourself around people who are excited about the future, who are, doing things, taking action, not trying to maybe, give criticism to those who are taking action. Because in the end, one is going to give you success. The other is going to stop you dead in your tracks. And I say find a community that's going to be. I don't know about you, but and there are some people. I'm not gonna lie that do get stuck, unfortunately, in a rut of negativity. But we don't want. It's exhausting being negative. Being negative and upset and frustrated all the time. We want to be in a positive community. So I'd say like the first thing that you can do is look at the community you're in, and make sure that you're in a place that's positive, that wants to, and help you move forward, not look at why you're not moving forward, like why, the negative aspects of what's happening, and that's just me personally. Find a community that's going to be really supportive of you and everyone else. I'd rather be in a place where everyone's supported.
Yeah, I think positivity is super important. If I look at the sort of critical qualities of anyone who's successful, not just voice acting, anything, but voice acting definitely. Being a positive, nice human being, you'll go so much further. If you're a diva, if you're angry, if you're a difficult human being to communicate with, if you're filled full of negativity and resentment and anger and frustration and jealousy, whatever. It's not going to look good. It's not going to help you grow your career. It's not going to help you be a beacon of light to others. It's not going to make you the sort of person that other people will want to congregate around. I do think that there is things that people should be able to educate about, with each other, yes, without necessarily being judged for it. And I think that, one of those things is right. One of those things is rates. Mm-hmm. Yes. People have a right to charge themselves at whatever they want. They shouldn't be put in a position where they're going to get judged because they didn't charge 20 grand for a job that they're going to take $2,000 for, as an example. No, I have to say, sorry to cut you off, but I have to say it's also important too that, we also, because I think that argument always goes towards judging people who charge less. And in all fairness, I don't think it ever goes to supporting people who want to charge more, and looking out for, and being understanding of them too, depending on, you might be in a community that's like, bashes people who charge higher rates. There's all types of communities out there. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't be done either. We shouldn't, if you want to charge higher rates, absolutely, or whatever you want to charge, right? It needs to be so we all need to be protected, or at least in an atmosphere where everybody, is, should be looking to understand every position, not just the lower rates, but also the higher rates. You know what I mean? Because that's often not supported in some groups, right? It's you could be looked down upon depending on what group you're in, depending, anything. Well, I think the thing is that, what groups offer is information, right? Sometimes that information is got rose-tinted glasses on. It makes things look more positive than they actually are. And there's some, information that gets, fed out that's really, really negative, and doesn't need to be that way. And I think the information is valid. People do have experiences that are not good on certain sites, yes, or certain platforms. And there's legitimacy behind those experiences. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about one site in specific. I'm just saying that there are sites that exist, which there's a few out there that are toxic. They're completely toxic, horrible places, run by horrible people. That's the end of the day. They're not big. They're fairly small, but they have a large enough footprint that it's a place that should be avoided. And there's information that can be exchanged about those types of sites that would be relevant to other people so that they don't make the mistake of getting involved and getting exploited. But on the flip side, people can start to tar multiple sites with the same brush. All sites are bad. All gig sites are bad. All P2P sites are bad. All sort of non-exclusive agencies are bad or something. It doesn't really matter. There's lots of people that get thrown out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. There's lots of people that get tarred with the same brush where they shouldn't necessarily be. And so I think staying pragmatic about information and about the exchange of that information is really, really important for any group. And I definitely think that a group that maintains that level of pragmatism, neither negative nor positive, just talks about information and the facts and what they know, and allows people to make the best decisions for them, is relevant and useful, and that's good for everyone. Our division is going to continue to exist, though, of course. That's.
I hear you, and I think with that being said, I think we, though, as a community, and and things like with me and you talking and stuff, this is an opportunity for all of us to learn more about each other, and to see where things are going, and to hopefully continue to grow as a community. So man, I listen, buddy. Thank you so much for talking to me. I love talking to you. It's such a blast. It's funny. We've talked so much. I'll make sure I do it in the intro, but I think we didn't even really talk too much about, hey, what is Voquent, for those of people who don't even know what Voquent is. But, you've been on the podcast. We've done podcasts together. So people who've listened to the podcast will clearly know who you are. And, but I'll make sure I give a little bit more info in the.
That's okay. That's all right. I think there's a lot of people that know who Voquent are now.
Yes.
So it's a little different to how it used to be.
Incredible stuff recently. Well, a lot. I mean, especially you just launched a brand new video, which, by the way, I love that video that you guys released. And I thought it was so clever. And it's funny because I've been talking about it with people because and maybe I got the wrong, and I'm just saying what I got from the video that you guys released, is just, the sheer amount of, voiceovers and voices that we come across in our everyday lives that we might not necessarily be fully aware of at that moment, but yet we use, just the number of places that we hear voices and voiceovers is amazing. From I think in that move, from documentaries to audiobooks to getting on there for translations to looking at just so many, the radio to wherever you are. I mean, they're everywhere all the time. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a cool and clever way to video games. My God, I mean, everything with e-learning. I mean, I love the video. I thought you guys did an amazing job. Congratulations on that. That was one of the best videos. I'm not just being biased because we're friends. I really think that was one of the best videos I've seen put out by any sort of voiceover company or anything, just for the sheer ability that it means. To me, it means more than just, buy a voiceover. I mean, you don't ever even say it's not about buying voiceovers. It's just about the sheer beauty of voice in our world. That's really cool, man.
Thanks, man. No, I really appreciate that. And so will everybody else when I kind of give them this feedback, or anybody who's listening, who's from our team here, will appreciate it. Cause that was a big labor of love building that. That was a lot of fun. And we live in a world where we're hearing voiceovers so much and so often. A lot of people just don't realize that, it starts somewhere. Where does it start? Well, one place that people can start is here at Voquent, and obviously talk to us about a project. And, it could be that we could, next be fulfilling a project that's got hundreds of voices or thousands of voices or 10 voices or just one amazing, perfect voice for one perfect job. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to do that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone else in this industry that's been willing to get behind a platform like video and make that platform market voiceover. I've seen people doing the opposite, which is what we hear every day, all the time, which is voiceover being used to market or communicate something else, shoes or a new movie or a radio show or whatever. But voiceover always seems to come second to the content. It always seems to be adding value to the content as opposed to being, the content itself. So we thought that, we could do something, we could take on a challenge, which is to try to make a video about voiceover, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but actually makes a lot of sense when you realize just how many different mediums it gets used and heard in. And so, yeah, it was a fun challenge to take on. And I think that, I hope that it starts other companies to think about making more video productions about what voiceover can mean, because obviously it's an amazing marketplace. It's an amazing vocation. It's such an incredible industry, the voiceover industry, and there's a lot of people that just don't recognize that it even exists. They just kind of take it for granted.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And, we're just super excited about that. And so thank you. And thank you so much for coming on. It's always a joy talking with you. Best of luck. It's Monday, so we've got the whole week ahead of us. So, man, you have a wonderful, wonderful week. All right, my friend. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. You too, man. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, listen, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast today. And I want to thank again Miles for coming on and spending quite a bit of time talking to me about stuff. So again, if you've not checked it out, I'd love for you to go check out a VO's Journey Elite Academy. It's absolutely incredible. Like I said, right now we offer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday live coaching sessions. Monday's voice acting, Tuesday's production, Wednesday's marketing, and Thursday we're doing business systems and accountability. And we've just started another class on Tuesday for our UK voice actors with our new coach, Catherine Siggers. And we're so thrilled. She's going to be teaching voice acting, and that's going to be at 7 p.m. GMT time, I believe. So UK time, 2 p.m. Eastern. Super thrilled for that. So we'd love for you to check it out. There'll be a link below. You get a deal. Like I said, it's half off the first month. And, or you can go to avosjourney.com and check it out there. All right, guys. Thank you so much as always for listening. You have a wonderful, wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.